Good evening, everybody, and welcome again to vBrownBag United States. Tonight we are continuing the series or kicking off. I'm not 100% sure. Our special on career and leadership. And I'm honored to introduce today Steve Athanas, who volunteers as VMware president, but is actually, I want to say he's the associate CIO for a Boston area college, and I'll let him introduce himself in a little bit. Giving a presentation called "What Your Boss Wants," as told by a techie who became that boss. So I've seen this presentation before at the VMware UserCon. It is phenomenal, and we're very proud to be sharing it here on vBrownBag. So Steve, take it away.
Ariel, thanks so much. Let me just start for a moment here. One of the most important things about presenting is to know your audience. So I went onto the vBrownBag presenter guidelines and went through, read this, and realized that this presentation is frankly a horrible fit for this particular venue. So, I mean, for instance, live demos, we're not going to do any of those. Slides we've got, but technical in-depth, no, not doing that, and certainly no deep technical focus here tonight. So we can just cross all that out. I will, however, do my very best to have some sort of conversation and attendee engagement. So, hopefully I can hit those marks while falling very, very far from ideal in terms of technical information. If you're here for, how to spin up Kubernetes, you might as well sign off now and see what's buffering on Disney Plus. But I will have nothing for you. On the other hand, if you are interested in how to relate in your office, how to potentially get ahead, how to ingratiate yourself to your boss, and we'll talk about why you'd want to do that in a little bit. This presentation may be useful to you, and I will highlight may. It may be useful. It also may not at all. So a quick agenda here. So first we're going to go through some disclaimers, some stuff that my attorneys have insisted I put in. We'll talk a little about who I am, then we'll talk about why you want to make your boss happy, and then, once you've decided that you do want to do so, how to do it. And then we will go through how some stuff to never do. That's actually my favorite part, just really bad ideas that you should not do in the office. And then we'll end with some general career advice, and hopefully we'll have some Q&A. Now, I'll be frank with you, this is the first time I've done this on any sort of remote webinar type environment. It is usually very interactive. I'm usually polling the audience and picking on people that are sitting in the front row. So we'll do our best to do that. So please jump in with questions. Ariel, if you can curate those and throw them my way, by all means, any way you want to give me something, feel free to interrupt. This will be better for all of us if my voice is muted somewhat by people's questions.
Okay.
So, what?
Okay, no, just agree.
Oh, I thought you were like, okay, you can stop talking now. I was like, oh, thank goodness. All right, so disclaimers. So look, the bottom line here is to note that this is not an exhaustively researched Harvard Business Review article. There is no framework that's been applied to this. Effectively, look, my career is hopefully very much in progress. I mean, I suppose I could show up to the office tomorrow and they're like, guess what, your career's over, and fine. But I hope that it's got another 25 to 30 years in it. So this is what's worked for me thus far, right? And hopefully it works for you, but your mileage may vary. And then, of course, I wanted to work Kanye, and somehow, and how better to work Kanye and than being like, this might not work at all. So a little bit about who I am. So I'm Steve Athanas. I am currently the Associate Chief Information Officer at UMass Lowell, which, if you're interested in geography at all, is like 30 miles northwest of Boston, right on the New Hampshire line, or just a bit down from the New Hampshire line. I do, in a volunteer capacity, as all of our VMware leaders and board of directors are, I'm a volunteer for the VMware user group. And I have been a Boston VMware leader for longer than I actually wanted to figure out, but I know something like 9 years or something like that. I've been a vExpert for since 2013, and I do carry some IT certifications. No VCDXs, no VCAPs. I'm not that smart, but I was able to study a little bit and get a couple of these. And I put that up there mostly to show you that like I generally used to have some street cred, even if it has since faded into the ether. I would love it if somebody reached out to me, mostly because I usually sit around lonely and wishing someone would talk to me. But reach me at email if you're into that kind of thing. Twitter obviously is more fun than email. And if you're like all into being professional and have a profile picture with you wearing a tie, sure, LinkedIn works just fine. So let's talk a little bit about my career path here. And I put this up mostly to just give you an idea of where I've been. And it's in basically three phases. And it just happens to very nicely fall in sort of chunks with the decades. So in 1990, so by the way, this is a little bit of a weird chart. You start at the bottom and then go up and then move to the right. So starting as an intern in IT, working in high school, right? And then becoming the desktop guy at a company, and then eventually somehow moving laterally into writing Oracle reports, which turns out it's really boring, and I didn't like that at all. So then I moved to a different organization and became the IT coordinator, which I still to this day don't know what that job meant, but I was basically a sysadmin. But then they gave me the sysadmin title, and then engineer, senior engineer, and then right around 2010, they started moving me into management roles. So I was like a team lead, manager, group leader, whatever you want to call it, and then associate director, and then a director. And then they gave me a whole other org, which technically would qualify for senior director, but they never updated my title. So I always put that in parentheses, like I was sort of a senior director, and then most recently associate CIO. So, okay. Now that we've gone through that, let's jump into why make your boss happy, right? So this is usually where I'm usually pretty flippant with the audience, and I'm like, who here has a boss? And like one guy doesn't raise his hand because he's like, I'm self-employed, and I'm like, well, leave. You don't need this. But most of us, to all of us, have a boss, right? And some of us, I don't know if anybody in the webinar right now is a boss, but if you are, you might find this resonates with you. You might find it doesn't. But the bottom line here is that if your boss looks good, your whole team looks good to their management, right? And you're on that team. So do me a favor, please connect those dots, right? If your boss looks good to their boss, you will be known as being on the team that looks good. And for a lot of senior managers, senior directors, they don't know everybody on their team. I mean, you get into hundreds or thousands of reports, you can't know them all. So it is a sort of simple brain trick that management uses to be like, you're on so-and-so's team. So if you are a star performer on that team, or you are the low person on the totem pole on that team, you are affiliated with that team. And so if that team is perceived well, you will be perceived well. Ergo, you want your boss to be perceived well, right? And I've seen people on great teams, I've seen people on teams where the boss had image issues, and they're great people and they're working really hard, but the boss is not well respected, and they have a hard time transferring to other groups sometimes because they sort of carry the if you will, the odor or stench of having an unpopular boss, right? So ultimately, you want your boss to look good. You want your boss to be happy, so that you are you sort of get that shining light of grace on you as well. So hopefully I made that clear. In simplest terms, if your boss looks good, you will look good, and if your boss looks good, they will be happy. Ergo, you want your boss to be happy.
So here's something for later on. Does that mean that people should move off of sucky teams?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get that question. I don't want to answer that later. I want to answer that right now. Yeah, if you're on a crap team and have a crap boss, life is too short for that garbage. You need to go find somewhere else to work. I've been fortunate that I've had a long career at one employer, and it's because I've worked with, frankly, really great people, and I genuinely believe in the organization I work for and what we do. But if I didn't, I would, if either of those things weren't true, frankly, I'd be out of there in a heartbeat. You are not stuck, right? So unemployment is at historically low levels right now. People are desperate for talent. And look, I'm not trying to be harsh to anybody here. They're desperate for good talent, but they'll take any talent, right? You don't have to be great right now to switch roles and get into a better company. So go find somewhere that's going to support you. And I have somebody ask me this every time I do this presentation live. Somebody has a question about, like, my boss is evil or whatever. I'm like, well, don't do that. Like, don't put up with that. Hit up Indeed. Rattle your network a little bit. I mean, if you're on a vBrownBag right now, you're on a webinar full of network potential, and I assume most of the people here. I mean, I know a lot of people just in the attendee list. So reach out to those people, reach out to Twitter. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen people reach out on Twitter like, hey, I need a gig. And like within minutes or hours, they have just a ton of different opportunities. So no, do not stay on a crappy team. Do not stay working for a crappy boss. We'll talk more about that later, but there's no reason to wait till the end of the presentation for that. So also, look, another reason to make your boss happy, right, is sometimes bosses can be jerks, right? And this is where I, usually say, who here got in a fight with their boss, right? And 8 or 10 people raise their hand. I'm like, who here won that fight? And like one person will be like, yeah, I won. I argued with them, and they were like, oh, you're such a pain in the butt, and I got what I wanted. And I was like, great, how was your review that year? And they're like, it sucked. And I'm like, you totally lost that fight, right? You're not going to win a fight with your boss. All the cards are on their side of the table 99% of the time. They're reviewing you. They're signing your paycheck. They are deciding what projects you get. You do not want to have an adversarial relationship with your boss. And if your relationship with your boss right now is adversarial, start looking for greener pastures, because that is one of the hardest things to turn around ever. You can have bad relationships with coworkers and you can mend them and you can make that good. But if you and your boss don't like each other, that is a hard thing to fix. So they have a lot of control over your quality of life. We spend a lot of time in the office, and you don't want them to dislike you. So obviously, you want them to be happy. So somehow I ended up going back a slide. So with that, hopefully we've covered why to do it. Let's talk a little bit about how to do it. But the easiest way to do this for the rest of the time we're together is to just sort of indulge me in sort of my own delusions of grandeur. Let's pretend for a little bit here that I am your boss, right? So for the rest of this conversation, we're going to pretend that I'm your boss and I manage you. I sign off your timesheets. I write your reviews. And so let me tell you what your boss, wants from you, right? So first and foremost is know why we have jobs at all, right? And so I'll pose this question to the group here, and maybe I'll see if anybody's in the chat wants to throw this out. But why why do we have an IT department at all? Why do we have IT at work? Why is that there?
So this will be very much. I would advise you just grab answers that you have received in the past, because
Okay.
they're chatting. They're not going to have the microphone open.
Sure. I will fake it, and we will pretend that people are just raucously replying to this. So look, I've had people say,
I'll give you. By now, there's a couple answers, right?
Oh, okay, cool.
Because everything is IT. Because of information, it's cheaper to keep IT in-house than to outsource it. So those were some answers that we got.
Oh, great. So, and those are all pretty fair answers, but they're missing the sort of, why do we have IT, right? Like, it's cheaper to insource it than outsource. Sure, but why do we do it at all, right? And the reality is, technology has been a thread in business or an organization since the dawn of time. And their answer is because it makes your business more effective and therefore more profitable. Or if you're not in it for profit, like I work for a nonprofit, it makes us more effective at achieving our mission of educating students and doing research, right? And this is the story is as old as time itself, right? Like if we go back to the dawn of civilization and we had two merchants, one that was they're both selling fruit, right? One that had a cart with that they had to drag on the ground, and one had a cart with wheels. Who could get to the market faster and sell more fruit? Well, the one that had the wheels. That's a technology story. I'm from Lowell, Massachusetts, and if you're familiar with industrial history at all, or the Industrial Revolution, our whole city in Lowell was built up around mill buildings and making textiles. And we had the technology and the wherewithal to make textiles better, faster, and cheaper than everybody else. And so this area dominated that industry for a long time. That's a technology story. And so then the technology was looms and cotton mills. But now the technology story is big data and cloud and analytics and being able to outpace your competitors based on information as opposed to based on machinery. But that's the bottom line of why we have IT. So you need to understand that, like, your job, your role, whatever cog you are in a machine, your role is to make the organization more effective. That's why we have IT. Whether we outsource or insource it are frankly decisions that management makes in order to be more efficient at doing it. But the reason we have tech at all is so that our organizations are more effective and more competitive, right? And then understand your particular business, right? And I've heard people say, like, oh, I'm just an IT, it's the same everywhere, but nothing could be further from the truth, right? It's IT is different everywhere, and knowing your industry and business makes you better at your job. So here's a good example. I work in higher education, and I thought for the longest time that the most important thing we did from a financial perspective was teach students. And it turns out that oftentimes that's not the case. One of the biggest drivers of whether any university is financially solvent or struggling is grants that they're getting for research, right? Those grants pay for a huge portion of the university. And so I had always made a decision just in my little area of the university to support teaching before I would worry about research. And it turns out that many times it's almost the opposite, right? Both are important, but there's times where there's important research grants that far to the bottom line of the university are far more important than whether we're able to teach one more class. So you have to understand how your business is structured. Where do you derive value from? What's important to your business? What's important to your value chain, right? And understanding your industry is the same thing. I mean, that's just another example. Higher education has a very different cost structure and financial motivators than does manufacturing. And I used to work in manufacturing, and understanding what's important there is really important. And look, here's sort of the bottom line, the summarization of this, right? If you can't make a kid in 5th grade understand what your industry and company does, you don't understand it well enough, right? So I can explain to a 5th grader what the University of Massachusetts Lowell does. I can explain what we do in higher education. You need to be able to tell that story. Now, I'm not saying your first day on the job, you have to be able to pass that test, but you need to be able to pass it at some point pretty quickly, or you're going to be without direction, right? And that leads us to the next thing, which is have thoughtful opinions and articulate them, right? So this is a key differentiator between the creep in the back office, which, I mean, look, I'm going to raise my hand here. That was me for a while, right? And the person in IT that gets all the praise and all the accolades throughout the business, right? You can be good at what you do, but if you can't communicate well, you'll always be in the back office toiling, and somebody else will be getting credit for your work because they'll be able to explain what amazing thing that you're doing to executives. Right? So clearly articulate problems or opportunities without using technobabble. Now, this is a skill that is learned. It is not natural for most of us. Most of us like to spend all of our time talking about, the difference in how we're architecting our storage arrays, or, how we're handling, different segmentation groups in NSX. But the bottom line here is that your boss, and frankly, my boss, needs to understand the issue. And I don't have the hands-on skills that you do. And my boss certainly doesn't have those hands-on skills. They, we're a project manager or something to get where they are. So practice this skill with your family members who aren't IT ninjas, right? And so that's important. You need to be able to go home and talk to your spouse or some friends that aren't technologists over a beer, and be able to explain what problems you're facing and how you're solving them, and have them understand them. So again, it's back to that sort of like be able to explain the technology to a 5th grader. I use crutches on this all the time. I use analogies all day long. I love to analogize computer stuff to car stuff because cars are ubiquitous. Everybody drives one. Most people know sort of how they work internally. And so I start talking about how whatever problem we're having relates to a car problem. Doesn't always work, but it's better than having nothing, right? Hopefully you'll get better than me and won't be using crutches like that quite so much, but it's a good way to start, right? And write well-crafted emails that I don't have to completely rewrite to escalate. So let me give you the pro tip on this one, right? I can't send more senior executives up my chain incoherent or rambling emails that are filled with technobabble and acronyms, right? Forwarding is more efficient than rewriting. So if you write a well-written, concise email summarizing the problem and a recommendation to fix it, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to forward that on to whoever has budget approval or line of business authority for whatever the problem is. I'm talking about larger problems, right? But I'm going to forward that on. So that does 2 things. One, you just saved me a bunch of time. So I'm excited about that because I can go spend that time somewhere else. But 2, your name is now on that. Whoever I'm forwarding it to knows that you did the work, not me, you. So you get something out of that, right? And I get something out of that. So everybody wins if you write better emails, right? And be able to speak in the office, right? Especially to people that aren't in IT, right? It'll help you be known as someone the business can count on. So this is that elevator pitch or water cooler talk, or if you see, you know, Ted from finance and he's like, hey, what's going on? Be able to have an answer for Ted about what you're working on and why it's valuable to the business. Oh, hey, I'm working on, you know, rebuilding our you know, vSphere cluster because we're going to save $65,000 every month, you know, by having lower cost hardware, something. I'm making stuff up now on the fly. But the bottom line is be able to have that conversation. You can practice that at home or in a coffee shop. Just be able to talk to people. You know, and that's not comfortable. There's nothing less comfortable for me than talking to other human beings. I dread anytime I have a task that involves me picking up the phone. My wife is nodding vigorously over to the side.
So I'll give 2 tips that I received in my career there. You want to write crisp emails. You know,
Yep.
you want to be able to say that there is no word here that is not doing an important function. And that also comes back to saying if you can say it with 3 words, don't use 10. You know, be
Yep.
concise, be clear, and use the less words you can use, sometimes the better.
Exactly. Exactly. And just don't take that to a fault and write emails that say like letter you, don't use text speak, you know, letter U GOTIT for you got it. Be like, you know, sure thing, I'm on it. You know what I mean? There's a happy medium there. But yeah, by and large, most people write far more than they need to. And you know, you get to paragraph 7 of an email and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Delete. All right, tip 3. Be awesome at what you do. Now, this is pretty simplistic, right? Being awesome at what you do is not optional. It's the foundation for why you get paid. So let me break this down real simply. I'm your boss. You work for me. This is kind of like a contract. You work, I pay, right? Example. If I manage an insurance claims administrator, hopefully everybody here has you know, auto insurance, and hopefully you have not gotten in an accident, but let's be honest, you probably have, and you've probably had to deal with insurance adjusters, right? So if you know, if that insurance adjuster can't accurately process claims paperwork, why on earth am I paying them? What am I you know, getting out of this relationship? I would stop, right? So the bottom line here is, you know, you know, if you're in IT, right, if you can't perform your function without me needing to prop you up, you aren't holding up your end of the deal. So you continue to be good at doing the work, and I'll continue to be good at making sure you get paid. You stop doing your role, I'll stop doing mine. Right? And you know, easy enough to transition into know your stuff cold, right? That, you know, that means investigate stuff related to your area, but not necessarily in your area, so you know the why, right? Don't just know the little tiny bit that you're working on. Know how it connects to other pieces. That's how you know it cold. That's how you know it in your sleep, because you start developing 3-dimensional understanding of issues, how they relate to other things, and how, you know, pulling a lever over here is going to modify something, you know, 3 or 4 weeks later in a completely separate area, right? And so what does this look like, right? What is being awesome at what you do? What does doing your job at an elite level look like? What does knowing it cold look like? Well, there was, oops, oh, it's the scroll wheel. That's what I keep screwing up. So here's the thing. Does everybody remember Who Wants to Be a Millionaire back when Regis Philbin was doing it? You know, back when he was only like 100 years old instead of like 150, right? So there was a guy on there. The first guy to win was this guy, John Carpenter, right? And he gets all the way up to, and remember the lifelines? So he had the phone a friend, 50-50, and ask the audience. He gets all the way up to the $1 million question. And he says, you know, Regis asks him the question, and he's like, hey, he hasn't used any lifelines. And he's like, hey, I want to phone a friend. I want to call my dad. And Regis says, wow, thank goodness. I thought the game was getting too easy. Thank goodness you had to use, a lifeline. Let's call your dad. And he calls his dad, and his dad comes online. He says, Dad, I don't need your help. I just wanted to let you know I'm about to win $1 million because the answer is D, final answer. Mic drop moment, balloons come down, Regis is blown away. The guy knew the answer cold. Like there was no guessing, no nervousness, no sweat on his brow. And if you look at this guy's face in this picture, that's the look of the smuggest SOB that's ever lived, who knew he just owned the contest. He owned it, right? Left, right, and forward. This guy had the number of this contest. That's what you need to look like in the office. There's no challenge that you can't knock out of the park with a mic drop moment. If you're like me and being good at trivia is something you absolutely cannot relate to, hopefully you can relate to this. I'm an Iron Man fan, and here's what I want to show you. Like, I don't know if you can see the video as crisp as I'm seeing it on mine, but he fires the missile and he turns away before it even gets close to what it's about to hit because he knows he's hit it. He doesn't need to think about it anymore. He knows that thing has gone right up the barrel of that tank and has blown it up, and he's on to the next thing. So be awesome at what you do. All right, this next one is actually, for me, possibly the most important thing you can do is level up people around you, right? Make people around you better. Teach people around you things that you know that they don't. And so I have an example, a story of two employees, and I'm going to abstract this as much as possible because we're being recorded. But I know some folks that work at an organization, and one of them was hired in as a desktop technician, and the other was a senior administrator. This is the same year, so go back about 8 years, 10 years maybe, to get to this point. And so you got a desktop technician and you got a senior administrator. The senior administrator was known for being able to get the work done, every time. You'd ask them a question, they'd answer it, and they'd get it taken care of. The desktop guy was known for not knowing the answer, but would spend the time figuring it out and then would write a document about how to solve a problem and then share that document with people on his team, right? So here's the difference here is here's one person who's sharing knowledge, who's getting it out in the hands of other people on his team. And here's another person who's really good at what they do, but keeps the knowledge to themselves. Flash forward 10 years, and this is sort of broken interactivity because we're not in the same room. But what do you think their roles are today, 10 years later? And I'll give you the answer. The senior admin is a senior admin. That desktop tech is now the manager of that senior admin. So just think about that. 10 years later, from desktop tech to being the boss of the person who was clearly more senior than that person. And the only difference that I've got for the two of them is that, one was insistent on leveling up people around them. And look, the simplest way to think about this is, the pro tip here is when you mentor others and make them better, you look so badass, everyone will think you're the best that ever lived. So it's good for everybody. You're leveling up people around you and you look like a stud. And that's the bottom line here. And I can't say enough about this. You've got to make people around you better. You've got to share information. It's good for everybody.
I got two comments there, and these are
Sure.
Ariel's personal comments. Sorry, I like commenting.
Please.
The first one is if you're unreplaceable or irreplaceable, you're also unpromotable.
Correct.
So if you one of those people that hoard knowledge because you feel that this is going to protect your job, you're going to keep doing that for the rest of your life. And the other thing that I had there, yeah. So when you cross train people and more people know how to do things, you're buying your vacations. You can go to a conference because you are not, the priority that has to be here in case something goes down. So important to
Yeah.
always remember that.
Exactly. Like, it's funny to think about, right? But you want to be as replaceable as possible because it lets you do new and different things and keep growing. Think about that irreplaceable Windows 2003 admin who, boy, we've got to have that Windows 2003 admin. They know everything. Well, how valuable are they today? Right? Okay. 5, be passionate about what you do. This is actually a really simple slide here, right? So when I was going for my master's degree, we went through this thing called Theory X and Theory Y, as it goes to sort of management theories. And I'll tell you right now, I think they're both bogus. But Theory X stated that everybody does not want to work, and you have to use aggressive tactics to motivate them, to keep them on task, between pay and discipline, and basically whipping people to get to work done. And Theory Y says everybody's intrinsically motivated to do a great job, and they always want to do their best, and they just it's the beauty of a hard day's work is all they ever ask for. I think almost everybody would agree that both those theories are crap. It's more like a continuum. There's people that are X on one side, and there's people that are Y on the other side, and there's gradient all in between, right? But if we just use that as a simple framework, what kind of person do you think a boss wants to hire? If you're hiring somebody, do you want a person who's X, who you have to be like, hey, do the thing, and then they do the thing, and then they stop until you go back in their office and go, hey, do the other thing, and they do the other thing? Or do you want somebody who's just happy to be there and would love to just do as much work as possible? And of course you want Y. Everybody wants Y. Y is what you're searching for, right? Everybody's searching for theory Y. Everyone can tell if you're punching in and punching out and just going through the motions. Everybody knows. Every office has a Frank who shows up at 9:03 a.m. because they know they're not going to get yelled at for being 3 minutes late, but they would get yelled at for being 5 minutes late. And they are out in the parking lot at 4:58 p.m. because they know nobody's going to say anything if they're out 2 minutes early, but they are punching the clock and waiting for the day to end, counting down the days to retirement. Everybody knows that person, right? But on the other hand, everybody knows the person who gets there early because they're excited about a big project. And everybody knows the person who is, takes it to the next level. If they're asked to document something, they don't just document it. They do, video tutorials on how to use it, right? Just taking it to the next level. So you could do the minimum and get noticed for doing the minimum, or you could give it everything you've got and get noticed for being elite and get extra opportunities, right? If you act engaged and excited, your boss will know you're in it for more than a paycheck. And the best employees, frankly, work for more than a paycheck. But being passionate also leads to being curious, right? So explore new ways of solving existing problems, right? Play safely in your environment, right? Poke around a little bit, explore how things are connected, how do they interoperate? What is the different, how is, let's say you're in the storage area, poke around in the network, see if you can get visibility into that read-only access. Don't upset anybody. Don't make the auditors angry by asking for write access, but see if you can get read-only access to more things just to explore and see how they're connected and see how things relate to each other, right? If we've had the same pain points for a while, dig into ways to solve it and present it to me, right? Like, hey, I know we've had this problem for a long time, and I was poking at it for a little bit. I had a couple spare minutes, and I, over the past month, and I just used some spare time here and there. And I think I got some ways that might make that better. Can I have some latitude to run a project to fix this problem? You're almost always going to hear yes to stuff like that, right? And you'll be known as somebody who's proactive, right? As your boss, if you can solve a problem faster, cheaper, or more repeatable than the way we've been doing it, I want to hear it yesterday, and I'm going to remember you when it's time to talk about, who do we need to promote? Who's really taking it to the next level, right? And so, being curious, right, is obviously closely related to learning, and so always be learning, right? Now, good news here, you're at a vBrownBag webinar, right? So you have basically self-selected saying you want to know more, you want to learn more, you are invested in this career, you are passionate about this. And it's the same thing I say when I am talking to people at a VMUG or, at the leader summit, right? Like, you have raised your hand already, you've self-selected, but change is the only constant in IT. So always be enhancing your skill set. Look, I don't need to harp on this too much again with this audience, but strive for certifications, right? If you love the tech, show you love the tech by investing in certifying yourself. It really does make a difference. And we've all heard the debate about, certifications don't prove anything. They may not prove that you know it better than somebody who does not have the certification, but they do prove that you care enough to spend the time to get the certification. They prove that you're invested in the industry. They prove that you're interested and excited about it. And frankly, I'm more interested in your attitude towards tech than I am how good you are at it. I can train you. I can get you training. we can level up your skill set. I care a lot about your attitude. And of course, blogs. You know, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention blogs here. If you're not reading blogs, and by the way, I left that I left that category wide open because it depends on what you're doing. If you're really interested in cloud native, be reading blogs that are digging into cloud native. If you're really interested in vSphere and you're like, that's my bread and butter and that's where my company needs me right now and I'm excited about it, read blogs about that. Read blogs about stuff you don't know if you're interested in. Explore them that way. But I promise you that if you start with one blog a week and you work up to one blog a day and you read 5 blogs or 8 blogs a week, I'm just making numbers up, but if you read 5 blogs a week and you do it 50 weeks a year, that is 250 different blog articles that you've read in a year, and I guarantee you're smarter than when you started, right? Slow incremental improvements, slow incremental learning will always lead to you being more skilled and more, well, just frankly, just being smarter than you were when you started.
I'll give you a couple of comments before you go on to the next slide.
Yep.
So the first thing in the previous slide, you talked about being curious. Be known for being curious. You know, if you see
Yep.
somebody that's busy, be very forthright about being, hey, I know you're busy. What are you busy of? Can you teach me? I'd love to be able to help you. That's something that you mentioned. Like sometimes you will not have access to these environments, but if somebody takes you under their wing, they'll teach you, and you'll get to know things, and they'll tell you what to avoid, and you'll get to form your own mind. But if you have the reputation that I'm not trying to take your job and you play nice with your colleagues, I'm not trying to
Yeah.
take responsibilities from you. I just want to help and I'm curious, right?
Yeah.
And regarding blogs, you touched on reading, and we also touched on before about language and knowing how to explain things. When we
Mm-hmm.
read blogs, we learn vocabulary and we see styles, but also the other thing that I wanted to bring up is you should start writing your own blog, even if it's just a
Mm-hmm.
blog for you to remember things, because that way you will practice communicating and transfer of ideas. So it really helps
Well,
with your language. So I probably I'm treading up something, but yes, also leveling people around you. Uh,
exactly. Writing a blog is like both of these, right? It's 4 and 7, right? It's leveling up people around you and always be learning. Because I don't know anybody who's writing blog posts about stuff they've known for 100 years. Most people I know are writing about stuff they just learned and they're trying to flesh out their own knowledge and share it with other people. So it's like both things combined, right?
yeah, awesome. Yeah, that was my comment.
All
Sorry.
right. So have a clear rationale for decisions. So this one, best way I can explain this is the story of how I got into virtualization. I saw VMware, I saw ESX years and years ago, and I went to my boss and I said, I want to stand up a cluster of ESX, to do some work in the office. Frankly, what I wanted to do is move our dev and test stuff to it. And I couldn't articulate why it was important. So all I was like, it's really cool. We can put all these servers onto less hardware, and we can snapshot them. We can go back and forth. And I couldn't articulate why, other than it was cool and it felt different and new and exciting. So it was rejected, right? That project was shot down, and they were like, nope, just continue doing what you're doing. We don't want to invest in that. So I spent a little bit of time trying to figure out why and write it up in a more reasoned rationale. And I came back and I said, this is going to reduce time and money spent on our dev environment. Here's how much it's going to save. Here's how much it's going to save in cost avoidance of buying new hardware, right? Because believe it or not, back in the day, we actually bought hardware for dev and test environments. We're going to save this much money on hardware. We're going to save this much time in setting it up, which is this many dollars in labor hours. I had funding by the end of the day, right? So being able to have a rationale and explain how what you're doing benefits the org or benefits the project is really important, right? So help me, your boss, understand why you want to spend resources on a project, right? So just a couple quick boss thoughts here, right? Like, don't come to me and ask to start a project because it's cool, right? I have a limited budget and finite resources, and I can't do everything, and I need to prioritize. So help educate me so I can prioritize properly, right? Okay, this one is completely self-serving, but make my life easier, right? As your boss, Bosses are busy. I don't know if you've seen your boss's calendar recently, but they're usually pretty jammed. They're in a lot of, I know I'm dragged from meeting to meeting all day long. And you can ask my wife, I get home and I'm like, please, somebody just let me sit in the room quiet for 3 minutes so I don't have to talk to people or have them talk at me. Our calendars are busy, right? We need to make sure the whole team is firing on all cylinders. So we're spending time with all of our reports. Many times we have skip level employees that we're spending time with, making sure we're trying to develop a team. It is time. It takes a lot of time. It's time intensive to be a manager, right? So save me time. Get your stuff done without needing micromanaging, right? Don't make me come and find you, right? Don't make me get status updates. Don't make me ask you. Proactively provide that stuff, right? Write memos that I don't have to edit. We already talked about that. Just let me forward on what you've already written. That saves me a lot of time. Figure problems out, right? Don't ask me to solve your problems every time for you. Don't ask me to solve your problems for you, right? Don't come to me with like, X is broken. Be like, okay, X is broken, and I think we can solve it by this or this, and I would recommend this. Have recommendations, right? I'll give advice, but you've got to give me something to start from. Don't just walk in and be like, blank is busted. What do I do, right? Because at the end of the day, if I spend more time managing you and telling you what to do than doing it myself, you're actually costing me, right? So here's your pro tip. Come with 3 options. Every time you have a problem, come with 3 possible options to solve it, and then recommend one of them. Tell me which one you would pick and why. And why is really important, right? So you can practice this tomorrow with your boss. Hey, here's an issue. We could do blank. We could do A, B, or C, but we should do A because A is going to end up costing us less because we already have the software laying around or whatever it is. Right? So here's why this matters. If I spend less time on you, I can spend more time on areas that need my attention, which makes the whole org look better, right? And remember, if your team, if your organization looks better, you look better. So again, ultimately self-serving. 10. See where you can help and jump in. This is really simple. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this one. In fact, we've already covered a lot of this. But if you have free time, start asking where you can help, right? Ask me how you can add more value, right? I asked my boss that one time years ago. I said, how can I add more value to the team? And he was like, I'm not entirely sure right yet. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But if you see an issue you can fix, do it. Proactively define and solve issues. And please, please, please volunteer for projects and work. Be helping your colleagues. If you know how somebody could do what they're doing more efficiently, or if you see them struggling at something and you know how to help them, please do that, right? Frankly, you want to be known as somebody that helps out team. We are talking about leveling up people around you, but it's you're giving them skills, but also you are helping them and you are getting known as somebody who can move the ball forward, right? And don't make me make everything a hard requirement. Don't be like, you need this done by Friday at 4:00 p.m. It's not fun for either of us. Right? Okay, and this one it is a little bit of a paradigm shift. Ask me what I want. You have a ton of power over your own career, and like we said 2 slides ago, a way to start this conversation is to say, I've been thinking about how I can add more value to the team. What if I did X, Y, or Z? And you can start that conversation. But ask your manager what they want from you. You should be having regular check-ins, regular one-on-ones with your manager. If you're not, that's a warning sign. Either they don't have enough time for you, or they don't think that you're bringing enough value to the team, or you've just decided that you can go off without any management and leadership. And while there's a few people who can do that, most of us have better careers if we're having check-ins with our management team on a regular basis. And I'll tell you, I prep and plan when I have my weekly one-on-one. So I report to the CIO. I have one-on-ones with him every Tuesday morning at 8:30 in the morning, and I spend a half hour to 45 minutes the day before planning, compiling my notes, and I have key things I want to update him on and key questions I want to ask him. And one of them is always, what is it that you saw over the past week that I could have done better? What coaching do you have for me? And I take it to heart, and I, importantly, try to adjust based on that feedback. Right? So ask me what I want. This next one is really simple. Couldn't be easier. Do the thing. If you're assigned a task, do it, right? And really importantly here, if I say I need something by a certain date, I need that by a certain date because I have promised it to somebody else by a certain date. Do not get past that date and time without checking in with me about what's going on. And if you know you can't hit that deadline, you need to let me know as soon as possible when you know you can't do it. So if I say, hey, I need this by Friday at 5 p.m., and you know on Wednesday at 3 o'clock that you're not going to hit that deadline, I need to see you Wednesday at 3:01, or I need an email from you Wednesday at 3:01 saying, I can't hit it. Here's why. Here's the obstacles. And then I can start resetting expectations on my end. But do not let me see you out in the parking lot at 5 or quarter of 5 on a Friday, leaving without having checked in with me that you're not going to get it done. That erodes confidence and trust instantaneously. You get bonus points for doing it early and going above and beyond, but minimally, do what you are assigned. I know that's really simple, but here's why this matters. I am rated on the performance of the team. I am rated on your wins. So when you have a slip up, you are, believe it or not, impacting how I am reviewed at the end of the year, and I am certainly not going to be happy with you as a result of that. And again, the whole talk is called How to Make Your Boss Happy.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Just
I
one
want to
thing
spend,
there. Make sure
yep,
that you finish things and you do them with quality,
yep,
because at the end of the day, your reputation is going to be how did you complete those projects or those tasks. It's there's people that will say it's done, but it was poorly communicated. It could have been done better. There's a thing about always improving yourself. Ask for feedback, but also think about the political capital that you're winning when you do projects well, and the political capital that you're losing when somebody has to come in and finish or redo what you did. So
exactly, exactly, spot on. All right, I want to spend just a second on this one. So, uh, again, I would ask the audience here if anybody knows what this thing is on the picture, but I'll just answer it by telling you the story. So, oftentimes you think this is an impossible task. We had a old Synology array that was having a problem, and it was a research array, so it wasn't really in our production environment, and we were trying to help out a researcher figure out what was wrong with it, but we didn't have a clear resource to assign to it. And I had somebody who was in desktop support who was like, hey, I'm looking to do a little bit more. I've got some free time. Frankly, I'm a little bored. Is there anything that I can do to help? And we said, hey, go take a look at the Synology thing. It's not critical information. We're just trying to help out. We want this researcher to be happy, and frankly, we want to get their research data back for them. See what you can do. And he said, okay. And he went and he came back and he said, hey, it looks like I need to run some diagnostics, but to run the diagnostics, I have to remove the drives, and I don't have a key for the drives, and the researcher doesn't have a key for the drives, and we didn't have a key for the drives because we didn't even buy the silly thing. So we were like, nope, sorry. Now, I can tell you with certainty that the vast majority of my team at that point would have said, well, that stinks. The thing is garbage. I don't have a key for it. They're locked in there. Whatever. Let's call it a day, go home, where are the beers? This guy instead went home that night and he looked at pictures of Synology devices, and he found what the key looks like, and he found the size of the key by comparing it to, it was next to a 2.5-inch drive in a picture, and so he was able to start reverse engineering the key. This is a key he designed, and he 3D printed it, and he brought it in the next day because, dude has a 3D printer at home. Kudos to him. Brought it in the next day and unlocked the drive bays, ran the diagnostics, figured out what was wrong, and got the thing fixed. So here's the point of this, right? He refused to lay down and die, right? That was not an easy task. And for some of us, you might look at that and be like, well, geez, it was just a Synology key. I've got 7 of those laying around. That's not the point. He didn't have it. He had never seen one of these things before, but he was determined to do it. And so I'll tell you what, the guy's name is Matt. He is a desktop technician in my organization, but now he's not. Now he's a systems administrator of my organization because he proved that he would not quit no matter what. And so we've got him learning a whole bunch of stuff. He's come up to speed in record time, and he's just a standout player on the team. So this little key, I still have this key. It sits in my office, and it is a reminder that it is never as bad as you think it is, and there is a way to solve the problem. So I also have a big poster up in my office that says it's kind of fun to do the impossible, which is a quote from Walt Disney. And it's true. You should live your life that way, right? It's not impossible. You just haven't figured out how to do it yet. Okay, we're going to blow through the rest of these because these are mostly fun, and hopefully you already know all of this. But this is things to never do, things you should not do in the office, period, no matter what. Acting like Dwight is item number 1. Don't be Dwight. 2, don't be a jerk around the office, which also is being Dwight, I guess, right? But here's a pet peeve of mine. Hopefully you know the Nick Burns, your company's computer guy, right? And here he is telling somebody, it's the email that's stupid, not you. We all know the old trope of the callous, socially inept IT person who frankly is condescending and a jerk. Don't be that guy. Don't be anything like that guy. It is a pet peeve of mine, and frankly, you are perpetuating a stereotype that is harming the rest of us in IT, right? So I have no tolerance for that on my team. I tell people that when I hire them, that I have no tolerance for that. Don't make up answers. Don't BS your way out of things. Be humble. And above all, understand that we serve an organization, we serve a business, and they deserve to be treated with the same respect that you would want to be treated with. Blowhards are transparent. Don't do that, right? It's simple enough. Don't be the office IT jerk. And don't complain, right? So if I have bad news for you, don't whine. Right? I probably don't like it either. This is a business, not a social club. And this message often comes after me debating stuff with my boss, and a decision has been made, and that's what we're going to do. Maybe your project got canceled. Right? Maybe we're moving offices. Maybe we used to have the cool corner space, and that's where they're going to put marketing, and we're going to be moved down to the basement. Right? I'm not happy about it either, but please don't complain to me. Don't just rant forever. If you are going to complain, if you do have a legitimate gripe, be articulate, have a clear suggestion and rationale, and if you get vetoed, take it gracefully, right? I'm happy to hear feedback, and you could say, I don't like this, I feel unappreciated as an employee, and I might say, okay, I understand, but it's out of my hands, let's move forward. And you can either choose to move forward or choose to do something about that in your own career, but don't just sit there and complain and be sour about it. It's not going to help either of us, right? And the bottom line here is be adaptable, right? That gets noticed and appreciated, right? And don't be sloppy, right? So, easily avoided mistakes make us both look bad. So here's a great example. One time I had somebody on my team who was trying to rezone fiber channel storage, everybody, we're going back in the day, but it was fiber channel storage, and they were trying to rezone the LUNs, and they had written down the WWNs, and they were like, okay, I think I'm good, and they fired up all the new zones, and nothing worked. And why? Well, their numbers were written down all haphazard. They weren't in any list. They didn't know what order they were in. They just scribbled them all over a sheet. And when they tried to re-enter them, they entered them in the wrong groups, right? So neatness counts, right? Poorly written emails mean you don't care. Not double checking your work means you don't care. And people that don't care aren't going to get ahead. So don't be sloppy. And don't act entitled. This one drives me crazy. Right? Entitlement ruins teams. Bonuses aren't guaranteed. That's why they're called bonuses. If you didn't get it, you didn't get it, right? And temper tantrums aren't professional. No one likes the entitled employee, right? All that hot air is wasted on me because I stopped listening quite a while ago if you're coming in to complain about how you deserve something that you didn't get, right? You want to really make me annoyed? Tell me how you've been here longer than I have. Tell me how you expect an office with a door and you're upset that you don't have one yet. Tell me about how you don't have to do the grunt work anymore. That one's especially annoying. That's below me. I don't need to do that anymore. Well, I'm asking you to do it, and it's important to the organization, so do it. I'm the associate CIO. You know how often I climb under desks? As often as I can, right? I want people to know that I am in this for them. I have personally helped people reset their iPhones before at our service desk because I was walking by and there was a line, and I could stop and I could help somebody out, right? There is no work that is beneath you. Do not act entitled. Here's an exception to this. If you deserve a raise, tell me why. Advocate for yourself, right? Explain your value. And if you can demonstrate that enhanced value, I want you to ask me for a raise. There's a fundamental difference between advocating for yourself and acting entitled or above others on the team. We're all on a team, and you shouldn't act like a job is beneath you. Right? Simple enough there. Okay, I am almost done. So I've been prattling on for a while now, so we can wrap this up. But I do want to give you some general career advice that has served me well. So I got 2 pieces of advice, pretty young, that I think have made a huge difference for me. right? So the first one was for my grandfather, who was my hero. And you know, he's been gone now for 20 years, but I still think about him almost every day. And the first one is, the harder you work, the luckier you get, which I think speaks to effort and discipline. Apply effort for a long time in a continuous discipline method, and you will have success. And the second one I got when I was doing my master's degree, which is be awesome at what you do, which is skills, right? You got to have those skills. We talked about both of these things in different ways. But so here's my own addition, and you can take this and or leave it, your choice, right? But effort times discipline times skills is going to equal performance, which is ultimately going to equal promotions. Or if you don't want a promotion, and look, there's lots of people that don't want to be promoted, they just want raises, or they want to be recognized for being elite technically. That is perfectly okay. It's the same formula: effort and discipline and skills. But here's the thing that I think is the most important takeaway here, which is that 2/3 of these, effort and discipline, are immediately controllable by you today, right? And the best part is, if you can decide tomorrow to go into the office and try harder than you did today. You can go into the office a little early. You can be a little bit more focused and spend a little bit less time looking at Reddit, right? You can knock it out of the park tomorrow by trying harder, right? And here's the thing: if you work that first part, if you apply effort in a disciplined fashion, you will learn the skills. That will come naturally, right? If you apply discipline and effort to your work, you will learn 100% of the time. I've never known anybody who's been like, I'm going to bust it at this for as long as I can. I'm going to put the next year and I'm going to give it everything I've got. And at the end of that year, they're like, yeah, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I've never known that person, right? I'm sure there are people that just genuinely, are in the wrong career field. But I think for most of us, if we're in tech and we've been in tech for a little while, you can learn new tech by applying effort and discipline, right? And by the way, this is, I give this to you not just in terms of professional development, but in life development as well, right? Like, I used to weigh quite a bit more than I do now, and it was effort and discipline, and I did it long enough that I learned the skills to have a healthier lifestyle, right? And look, I had kids since then, and I put some of it back on, but I haven't got back where I was. So, this to me is like a life formula that I use or try to use all the time. So that's it. That's the end of the presentation. You've survived. I haven't looked at the attendees. I don't know if we still have anybody here or if you've all bailed and run for the hills. But look, I enjoy chatting with people. I don't know if you have any questions or anything, but certainly reach out, and I would love to hear from you. Let me know if it sucks. You can tell me it sucks. That's okay too.
So I'm going to open up mics just in case anybody has a comment that they want to give.
Sure.
They're also free not to comment anything, but I just think that, especially with career, people, just like I did when you were mentioning through the slides, there's things I've learned that resonate. So if anybody wants to comment and give more tips or just comment on in general, I know Steve loves the interaction.
Don't all jump at once.
Yeah. Where's my damn cricket button? Nobody had a cricket sounds button. That was really cool. No, Steve, I really enjoyed it. As you know, I'm a big fan of yours, and I've
Well,
seen.
thank you. That goes both ways. I am constantly in awe of your amazing contributions to the community, and frankly, you wield Twitter like a lethal machine, man.
I did pay Steve for that, so just disclaimer, I paid Steve so he would give me some props at the end. Um, no, but seriously, I've seen so many good career presentations at VMUX, and I really appreciated that you took this that's normally reserved for the UserCon keynotes, and you put it on vBrownBag, and you saw the Twitter thread where people were saying, yeah, let's go ahead and record them, because the more that we share tips, the more that everybody else gets better and finds ways to improve. We did get a couple comments. I think that some of the people are not particularly like ready to open up the mic, and I also know some people don't have their mic enabled. But here's the comments that we got: a good talk and a very engaging presenter too. So there you go.
Oh, Well, thank you.
Yeah. And here's from our friend Al Rashid. Nice presentation. Nothing to add, but it's a fine line between doing what you think is right and what is perceived as right. So I don't know if you
Ooh,
take
that's
that and maybe explore that, right? Because especially when we talk about integrity and doing the right thing at work, um, that can mean one thing, but if they take it in a certain meaning or a certain interpretation, or when you factor in political points, it doesn't always work out that way. So maybe you want to dig into that one.
yeah, that's actually boy, I've never conceptualized it like that. That's awesome. I need to spend a little bit of time thinking about that, but that I would not be surprised if that ends up in version like 9.6. We're already on version 9.5, but I wouldn't be
Oh
surprised if that
wow.
ends up version 9.6 of this presentation because I tell you that is such a succinct way to put it, right? Like if there is a disconnect between what you think is the right thing to do and what your boss thinks is the right thing to do, um, unfortunately, in sort of the world we live in, you're the one that's out of sync because it's always your, that's sort of the boss's prerogative. But yeah, definitely, that perception matters
I'll
a whole
give
lot.
you an even worse part. What happens when your director has a meeting with everybody, right? And
Hmm.
then your engineers are like, yes, the director said this, but the managers are like, our priorities are over here. I know you think you're helping, but we have to finish this first, right? And a lot of times
Mm,
people become enamored with the idea that I'm gonna do this by my own and it's gonna help everybody, right? But if you don't
right.
involve your boss sometimes, and if your boss doesn't know what you're doing or why you're doing it, um, you might be actually walking into a situation that is not as favorable. So always check with your boss. That's probably one of the biggest takeaways that Steve gave us today is that you and your boss are a team and you should always work as a team. And especially when there's things that you feel you can do more, consult, right? If you really feel that your skills and your passion is better served doing something else, that's another conversation you can have. Just
Hmm.
you will find bosses that are more receptive and bosses that are less receptive. You will find bosses that are really into coaching and mentoring people, and bosses that are just so overwhelmed that they can't see past what they're. You never know when your boss is in a tense situation where he may be about to lose his job. So the stress levels, you never know exactly what people are going in inside their minds. So just work with your boss and make sure that even if you want to do something extra because you feel it's really what you want, what you have to do, make sure your boss at least knows about it. I
Yeah.
guess that would be my point. And the last one that we got was one of the best things a boss can do is be that buffer between the technical and the non-technical. Um, so that I actually don't agree with that, but go ahead, Steve. You think you can give that one a crack?
Yeah. So I think I see where they're coming from on this one. I don't know that I also generally disagree with that. Um, but I think of it more in terms of coaching, right? Like the best thing a boss can do is coach you to not need somebody to do that interpretation, right? I find so running a service organization right now, it would be miserable if I had to be between the business and everybody on my team all the time. Like that's not scalable, right? So I need people on my team to be able to do that. Now, at the same time, my role I view is to coach people and help them build that skill, build that reflex if they don't have it now. On both sides, help them build tech skill if they need that, and help them build the sort of translation skill. Um, to me, and maybe this is sort of idealistic of me, but I think the most important thing or the best thing a boss can do is put me in situations where I can practice that safely without, causing, injuring my reputation,
Yeah.
and and um, and coaching me and giving me tools to do that. That would be how I would respond to that. I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah, no, and something you have to realize, especially if you come from the help desk, you get into administrator and engineer. The people that reach architect are really good at interfacing with anybody and
Yeah,
providing solutions that may not sound technical when they're explaining it to other people, but they know how it works on the back end, and they know they can come back and talk with the technical people and also interface with them. So if you think of the typical career progression there, the architect people really don't make their money because of the technical knowledge. Sure, they need that, but they mostly make their money off of their communication skills and being able to
correct.
interface through different audiences. So
And it pays. It pays. That pays really well. Like that is, you know, that not to get too much in the compensation thing, but communications skills very often drive paychecks.
yeah, so I'll leave that food for thought for our friend Graham who brought that up. I think that should be it. I feel that this we gave enough. Steve, you put enough ideas out there that I would expect some people to comment on it. So I'm hoping that it will spark even more conversation and it will help a lot of people out there. So if
Hey,
you have
I hope so. That's my only hope is that somebody gets some value out of this eventually at some point.
Yeah. So again, that's his email, that's his Twitter. He loves responding to Twitter 24/7. If he doesn't respond within 4 hours, you're totally in your right to tell him, hey, what happened to my SLA?
Yeah,
So
no, I actually, if I do not respond within, I'll actually one up you. 2 hours is my SLA. If I do not respond within 2 hours, I will discount the admission to a VMUG by 100%.
oh my God, you cracked me up. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, and thank you, Steve.
Thanks so much, everybody. It was a pleasure to be here.
Bye bye.